Hey, what's up, everybody? Navid is here. I'm a lifestyle entrepreneur and creator of Virtual Summit Mastery, and we help people just like you exponentially grow your email list, influence, and revenue. And for this session, I'm really stoked to have the ConvertKit founder, Nathan Berry, on board. And for this session, we're gonna do something a little bit special. We are going to take you behind the scenes of how Nathan grew ConvertKit from this kind of side business. He wasn't really focusing on it too much in the beginning, and then he went all in, and now ConvertKit got over 100,000 email subscribers. And hear this, like, check Bear metrics before we went on here, and it's almost at $16 million annual recurring revenue at the time we're recording this, which translates to a little over $1.3 million in monthly recurring revenue. And that's just, to me, mind-blowing. That's incredible, and obviously a lot of credit to what Nathan and the team over at ConvertKit has built. But this is not really the reason why we are doing this. Obviously, that, yeah, you're gonna build an 8-figure business, or you might not even have a software company. Every single person in ConvertKit, Nathan himself, they're online creators, just like myself and the people, obviously, in my audience, online creators. And we're gonna make sure the principle and strategies Nathan shares with you here today, that's gonna translate over so you can implement it in your own business. That's why I brought him on here. So warm welcome, Nathan. Happy to have you on here.
Yeah, and thanks for having me on. Excited to be here.
For sure, man. So let's take people back a little bit. Obviously, we're not gonna get too much into the whole backstory. People can, you have a lot of stuff out there like how this happened and stuff like that. But I mean, you were blogging. You still have the blog, nathanberry.com. You still have some of your products, but now, before you were focusing more on that as a creator, then obviously, translating that over to ConvertKit. So share a little bit that story, and then we can get into kind of some principles and strategies for list building here as well.
Yeah, so let's see. I started blogging back in 2011, I think. My background's in software design, and so I was working on designing iPhone apps, designing web apps, things like that. And I was always obsessed with kind of that early crew of bloggers I'm trying to think who all was in there. Tim Ferriss, Chris Gillibo, Leah Babauta, people like that who had been doing it since 2006, 2008, et cetera. And so I just got into seeing if I could start and grow my own blog and audience. I followed a lot of people in the web design space, so there's a lot of that. And the first product that I ever made and tried to build an email list around was an ebook called the App Design Handbook. It built an email list of 798 people. Still remember it down to the person. And that was the pre-launch list for the book. And when the book came out, I had hoped to do $10,000 in the first, I guess. No, I was gonna say in the first day. No, I'd hoped to do $10,000 in like the whole lifetime of creating the book. Like that was the number that was like, okay, it's worth it for me to write a book if I can make 10 grand off of it. And ended up making 12 grand in the first day. And so then that was like my crazy introduction to the world of digital products and building an email list and all that. Because the email list, as everyone watching this knows, like, no one would be surprised. I was quite surprised, but no one watching would be surprised to learn that the email list drove, nearly all the sales.
Yeah, I mean,
So
for sure.
that was how I got to start.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I know you're focusing that creating some products around this. What was the number one way in the beginning of, I guess, your blog and stuff like that, how you built up that email list and kind of how you engaged the audience? And obviously you can share some differences what you're doing now with ConvertKit, obviously, or if something translates over as well. So I'm interested to hear that first, and then we can go over to the other things.
Yeah, so in the early days, it was a lot of just me being like, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, sign up to follow along, right? There weren't fancy techniques or anything like that. It was really just, hey, I'm a designer. I'm writing a book about how to design iPhone apps. If you want to learn more about that, put in your email address here and you'll be the first to hear about it. Yeah. And awesome. that sort of informal way of doing it, right, ends up being really authentic. Because what you end up having is people are just following you, right? There's no like polished marketing technique. It's just like, I'm writing a book. This is what you'll learn if you're interested to opt in. And that casual style, I think, still works really well because that's how you build, like, weave really a personal brand into it. And people feel like they're following a person rather than like, I could go get design tutorials from lynda.com or Udemy or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah,
So the two
that's
things
really
that I did
interesting
the most.
actually. Yeah, I just wanted to share that. I mean, that's interesting because a lot of people are talking to put the next kind of fancy technique or something, but like you created something of value with these kind of ebooks you were selling, but also giving away something for free for people to kind of check out as a preview kind of. I think I checked out some of your products early in the early days, and
Yep.
like you had an audience kind of handbook or audience building handbook as well. I think you still have some of these. I mean, you're still on your site basically, so you are an online creator, although you're not kind of focusing on that. ConvertKit is your focus right now, but maybe kind of going from that, like what you were doing with these kind of products, and when did you realize that you had kind of a issue with like the email list, like the tools available? When did you want to start developing something, of your own for that? Well, I mean, what was the available tools when you started?
Yeah. So the main tools when I started were MailChimp and Infusionsoft. And I was new to the email space. So I was using MailChimp. I got my first 800 people on the list. I grew the list pretty quickly because I ended up launching another book called Designing Web Applications a few months later. And that, I think I had maybe 3,000 people on my list when I launched that. And the launch was twice as big, and email played a huge role. And so I was doing all this in MailChimp. And I was learning all these best practices, so how to tag your customers, and like keep track of who your buyers were versus those who didn't buy, talk to them separately. Um, Other things in there that I did were, content upgrades, like giving away a sample chapter, and then like a basic email sequence, right? If you download the sample chapter of the book, here's a series of emails trying to get you to come back and buy. Those were all things that I set up. It's pretty basic stuff, honestly. And I would do all of that in MailChimp, and it was a pain to do. Like, it was really hard to do. And so I remember thinking it shouldn't be this hard. And so I went out and asked friends what to do. And they're like, oh yeah, no, it just sucks. You have to hack around it. Or they'd say, go use Infusionsoft, which was the most popular for like the pro users at the time. And it was kind of interesting because as a designer, I'd go like play around with Infusionsoft, and I'm like, I can't, like, I'm over here preaching easy to use software, user experience, all these things. It'd be hypocritical of me to then go use Infusionsoft that was like really just a user experience to like nightmare, disaster. And so then I kind of thought like, okay, what if I built my own? What if I built a tool that had these best practices built in by default? So it was actually only 4 months. So September 2012, I launched the App Design Handbook. December 2012, I launched my next book, Designing Web Applications. And then January 2013, I started working on ConvertKit. So actually, that was probably like the most productive period of time in my
Yeah.
entire life. Those 4 months.
That's impressive, man. Like you definitely had a lot of projects going on, but I mean, you launched ConvertKit. It was, I mean, I don't know if I followed you at that stage, but I think I definitely saw ConvertKit when it was kind of really really early stage, and you
Yep.
barely, maybe you had a few kind of early customers or people who got in there, but like how was that? Like, what was it like to get those first people, and what was the strategy to get the first people to sign up for ConvertKit? Like, I mean, that was before even you started focusing on it full time and all this. Yeah, how was that?
Yeah. So a technique that I've used throughout my entire career, I've kind of summed up in this phrase of teach everything you know. Of uh, people often run into like, I could blog, but I don't know what to write about, or I could do this, but I'm not an expert. And so I always try to say, well, they actually got to that point. Like, you become an expert through teaching. You become seen as an expert through teaching. And so I've always had this idea of clearly stating where I'm going and then asking people to follow along with the journey. So what I did is said, I'm going to start this web app. I'm going to try to get it to 5,000 a month in recurring revenue within 6 months. And I'm going to like live blog the journey. So every week or twice a week, there's going to be a post coming out saying, this is what I'm working on. This is how I'm choosing a name. This is how I'm hiring a developer. These are the customer interviews that I'm doing. This is how I'm launching it. And what that ended up meaning is that people would follow along the journey. And it was amazing how many people kind of came out of the woodwork to help me out. People like Heaton Shaw from Kissmetrics, and Crazy Egg and a bunch of other stuff. He said, hey, if you need any help, happy to get on a call. And so that's how it started. And I've always followed that of not just teaching like, here's a tutorial, here's how to do this thing, but also teaching, here's what I just learned. And
Man,
that
that's really
makes a big
powerful,
difference.
actually. I mean, that's kind of like a little bit like Tim Ferriss' approach. Maybe you don't know everything yet, right? Like you might
Right.
still share what you're currently doing, and sometimes you might not even be. Maybe you're watching this and you don't feel as you're the expert right now, but you can share your journey of getting better at something. And I mean, you're weren't maybe the expert at developing softwares and all this, but people could still learn from that and be inspired from what you're doing. And I guess, I mean, that kind of how you also got the first people to, hey, I can test it out for you, I can, jump in there, give you feedback and all this. What would you say that was kind of the strategy to get the first, I don't know, how many users did you get in there for ConvertKit in the early days?
Yeah, so that was definitely the strategy, because people would follow along and be quite interested in it, and you know, uh, see where everything went.
Yeah.
Those early customers, there weren't that many. The goal within 6 months was to get to 5,000 a month in revenue, and we didn't come close to hitting it. We got to 2,100 a month, I think.
And when was that? What stage?
That would have been, so 6 months after launching. So January, or sorry, like July 2013.
Okay, got it.
Um, and so that was, each customer is paying about $50 a month. So, um, what is that? Is that 400 customers? Something like that.
Yeah, got it.
Uh,
And
yeah,
that
not
that
that
was
many.
obviously before you started focusing full time on it. So okay, so you had a few. I mean, you got your first initial customers. I mean, ConvertKit wasn't obviously, you didn't have too many features and stuff like that. It was very kind of, like just kind of the essentials to do. I guess some email sending and stuff like that. Maybe you had a I mean, ConvertKit. What I remember, at least me, I think I signed up when you had the first kind of at least version to the public, and then you had obviously the
Yep.
sequences, or maybe you called it courses at the time. And basically, people,
Yep.
what
We
stood
did.
out to me and still is a core feature is that how easy it is to add all the emails, and it's like very natural. You don't have to kind of leave that tab and go out there and click through to the emails, and that's still very user friendly today. And even though you added visual automations and a lot more to these days. So can you just walk us through that, like how you actually went from that? Did you get the feedback and then reiterated, and then did this, all of a sudden decide, hey, I'm gonna work full time on this? When was that kind of turning point for you?
Yeah, so it was a longer period of time from there. So I kind of thought that, you'd launch this thing and just kind of grind it out over time, right? And it would improve and we'd get better and go from there. And I thought that the revenue would gradually increase. And what actually happened is that, within 6 months, we got to about that $2,000 a month mark. And then it just stayed there, because I sold the initial version off of kind of that initial hype and the first feature set. But as you mentioned, like, that was enough for some people to get off the ground, but it wasn't enough to get people to switch from whatever tool set they were using, right? You weren't going to move off of MailChimp to ConvertKit, at least for the features that we had. And so what ended up happening is that revenue stalled for the next almost a year, actually over a year. And it's hard to think, oh, I should put more time into this thing that's not working. And so what that meant is that we didn't make progress, and revenue was at 2,000 a month, and then it just kind of gradually started declining from there. And I ended up having this conversation with Heaton Shaw, where he was just saying, look, this isn't working. You should shut it down. You'll be successful at whatever you do, at the next venture. You've shown that through launching books and courses and building an email list. So you should shut down ConvertKit and move on to something else. And I remember thinking, like, one, that's not a very nice thing to say to somebody, like, shut down this project that you're working on. But two, he's got a point. This, I'm a year and a half into it. We're now down to making like $1,400 a month. And well, that's not going to work. It's not even paying its server costs right now. And so then I had this moment of thinking about, okay, what am I going to do? And I think that anyone who's made products before comes to this moment, unless everything you've ever made has been successful, which is certainly not the case for me. Then you come to this moment where you think, do I need to grind this out more and then I'll become successful? Or is it time to just pull the plug? And I ended up making my own little framework for basically deciding how I was going to make that decision. And it came down to 2 questions. And the first one was, do you still want this as much today as the day that you started? Right? So it's normal for motivation and interest to change over time, right? It's normal to say, I really wanted this before, I started working on it, and now, you know what, I'm not as interested in writing this book, building this product, whatever else. And that's totally fine. So ask yourself, like, do you still care about that? If not, just shut it down, move on, right? If it's not interesting to you, cancel the project, move on. There's lots of cool things to work on in the world. Don't drag something out that you don't want to work on anymore. But if you still want that, if you're like, no, I still want this. And this is what was true for me, right? I wanted the next challenge of building a software company. I wanted the next thing from the books and courses that I was doing. So it's like, okay, I still want this. It's like, okay, good. Well, then let's go to question number 2. And question number 2 is, have you given this every possible chance to succeed, right? Have you given it your best shot? And when I thought about that, I realized that if I were to shut down ConvertKit, I would look back years from now and wonder, oh, if I had done this, could I have made it work? If I had done this other thing, like, could I have actually made it work? And I would run through a bunch of ideas. And there was a chance of regret there, right? Where I'd wonder if that was possible. And so then I saw a disconnect. I was saying, this is incredibly important to me, and I haven't really given it every chance to succeed. I've been working on it part-time. I didn't put that much money into it. You know, I didn't try these techniques. And I wasn't willing to live with that disconnect. So for me, that meant we got to double down on it, right? I got to at least give it a try and see if I give this everything I've got, if I can make it work. And so almost 2 years into ConvertKit, that was the turning point where I doubled down on it, stopped doing everything else, and focused on ConvertKit. And we slowly ramped up from there.
Yeah, man, that's so inspiring. I mean, that can be applied to, like, what you're just shared here can be applied to pretty much any project. Like, maybe you have something that didn't go as planned initially, but you might still have, maybe you haven't, given it everything you got, right? And then maybe that's worth a shot if you're still less excited about it. So definitely like that. And yeah, well, continue sharing kind of what you did after that. I mean, you had a turning point. You decided, okay, I'm going all in on this. So did you just shut down I mean, you had revenue streams, obviously, from the other things. You had an email list there. Did you just kind of stop serving them, or did they play a role to bring them over to, okay, now I'm going all in the ConvertKit, and kind of getting them to sign up? Or what was the approach there you took to just kind of do that change?
Yeah, they definitely played a role in kind of the new venture. The first thing I thought, so I was averaging about $10,000 a month from my books and blog when I didn't do a launch. And then if I did a launch, maybe that would be a $30,000 a month. And I assumed that $10,000, $12,000 a month, when I stopped working on it, would just kind of coast down very gradually. And that's not what happened. Like it just kind of dropped off pretty quickly. Like immediately the next month went to like 6,000 and then 4,000. And then it kind of hovered around this $2,000 a month mark. So that was a bummer. But I stayed focused on ConvertKit. And I let everybody know this is what I was doing. Like there's a blog post I'm saying, hey, I'm going all in on ConvertKit. This is the focus. Because there were people who were saying things like, I would sign up for ConvertKit, but it makes me nervous that you're working on it part-time. Like, why would I trust something that's core to my business to a business where the founder's not, all in on it? And that was a good lesson to learn. But there's a couple things that I did to really go all in on ConvertKit. The first one is that I took the money that I had in the bank, which was $50,000, and I put that into ConvertKit. I said, okay, we're going to give it a real amount of money to get going. We're going to spend that on development and the team. So that second thing was hiring a team, hiring in-house developers and someone in-house to do customer support. So we went from me and a contractor to me, 2 full-time people and 1 part-time contractor. And so then we could start to move a lot faster on improving the product and making this good. The next thing that we did was really pick a niche and go all in on that. So it took some experimenting. But instead of being like email marketing for everybody or email marketing for people who have problems like Nathan does, it turned into email marketing for professional bloggers. And that really started to turn the corner, because I was like, okay, now I know who to reach out to. I know who to message to. I know what features to talk about, what features to build, really. And then the last thing there was really to start direct outreach. I'd always tried to sell through content. When you go to a blog post, trying to get people to sign up and buy from that post. And so this really was me taking the other approach and saying, let me get on calls with these bloggers, try to understand their needs, try to see what frustrations they have, and see how ConvertKit can solve it. And that made all the difference. And so I was able to start getting these calls with people who had, a few thousand email subscribers or 10,000 email subscribers, and start selling one account after another, and ramping up.
Yeah, were these
And
more
I
like
guess the
regular?
last
This
thing,
gonna was it even more like regular people, by the way? Like not like that was not the stage where you got Pat Flynn initially, right? That came after that, must have been, right? So you were starting with these kind of, I mean, they still had an audience, and you kind of reached out to them. Were there some strategy there to just get them excited about ConvertKit, and did you have any users who were raving about it at that time that you can kind of leverage to get other people to sign up? And what was it like at that stage?
yeah. So we certainly didn't have any big name users. Um, the way that it worked, say January 2014, no, January 2015. So 2 years after starting ConvertKit, we're sitting at like 2,000 a month. I've gone all in. We've got a team now. And the sales pitch that I would use is a lot of where we were going. And then I had expertise, and I was starting to be known as the email guy, because I'd blogged about so much of it, how to sell ebooks, how to set up these things in MailChimp, et cetera. So a lot of what I would offer people is, hey, if you switch to ConvertKit, then I will put a bunch of time personally into optimizing your funnels, configuring these things, that kind of thing. And that worked well. And then the other thing that I would promise is that I would do the entire migration for them for free, because they would inevitably be like, oh, I'd love to switch, but it's too much work. And so when I made that promise, then it started to go a lot better. People would take me up on that. And so you're right, we didn't have any Pat Flynn's or any big names, but one by one, I'd work on getting those getting those accounts, reaching out to people in really narrow, specific audiences. So we had a popular blog at the time in the paleo recipe space, run by a guy named Joel Runyon, called Ultimate Paleo Guide. And he was using ConvertKit really well. And so then I thought, okay, let's go try to get more paleo recipe bloggers, because they're going to know Ultimate Paleo Guide. So whether it might not be a giant site in the broader internet where everyone's like, oh, you've got Tim Ferriss, oh, that's amazing. It's not like on that level. But if you're in that niche market, you're gonna be like, oh, I know them. And that will work as well. So you try to, if you don't have the biggest name to leverage, then you go for the most relevant.
Yeah, I'm totally. I mean, this is great, because I love, obviously, relationship building and partnerships, and it seemed that was really a key component of ConvertKit. First of all, getting some great users, and using the platform when you went all in, and even kind of from your nathanberry.com days when you had the ebooks and kind of all that stuff. I mean, it was also important there. You brought people along for a journey, and you kind of did the same there. So I guess it translates over to what you do now with, I mean, at least initially. We can also get in what you guys are doing now, but I think it's still quite big on partnerships and stuff like that for ConvertKit. But yeah, when I think in 2015, still you got Pat Flynn on board, right? So okay, you started to get these users like Joel, and actually I've interviewed him before as well, so I know of him. He's obviously has a big site, so that must have helped to kind of get some other users on board. I know also, I think I read on Pat Flynn's blog, he was struggling with Infusionsoft and some other stuff, right?
Yep.
So then you must have had some kind of relationship with him, or what happened there to get someone like him on board?
Yeah, so to get Pat on board, we'd met at a couple conferences. Conferences are just the best way to make connections, right? You show up in person, you meet people, and then if you follow up afterwards, quick email, hey Pat, it's so great to meet you. Really enjoyed, hanging out, playing blackjack, which is I think what we did at one conference. Yeah. We definitely, I'm trying to remember what conference that was. Was that New Media Expo? I think. I don't think it's even around anymore, but it was in Las Vegas.
That's not even around anymore. I don't think so. So that's good.
Yeah. So it's those sort of things, right? You have friends in common, you reach out, follow up with people, all that.
Yeah.
But Pat was moderately interested in being an affiliate, but he'd made the move to Infusionsoft and he didn't want to move from there. And I was going to a family wedding in San Diego. And so I reached out and said, would love to sit down and talk. We met for coffee, worked through kind of okay, what would it look like if Pat was to become an affiliate for ConvertKit? That could be cool. And he was, interested, but kind of like, let's see how this product develops over time. And then like a month later, I did a demo with Chris Ducker. And I don't know that I've shared this story publicly before, but I do a demo with Chris Ducker. He really likes it. Him and Pat Flynn are best friends, which I knew that. But I didn't realize that when I hung up on the Skype call, Chris immediately called Pat and said, have you seen ConvertKit? You have to use this. And so Chris actually is the one who sold Pat on using ConvertKit, which is pretty funny because then Pat reached out right afterwards and was like, hey, sounds like we need to take another look at the product. And then it kind of went from there. He'd been having a really frustrating time with Infusionsoft. And so he signed up for ConvertKit. We set it all up. The day he signed up for ConvertKit, actually, we were doing $10,000 a month in revenue. So this was July 2015. So in 6 months, we'd gone from $2,000 a month to $10,000 a month. And I was like, all right, we're going places.
Just before you what was your email list for? I mean, you had your personal when you started, so that was, I guess, maybe 10,000, 20,000 or something, maybe more. And then you had ConvertKit. So I mean, obviously now it's completely separate. So what kind of email list size did you have at that time? I know it was a lot of personal outreach to get some of these bigger users as well, but did you have any type of customer acquisition, lead generation in place for ConvertKit that was kind of, I guess, more automated at that stage? And, what was the main ways you grow your email list at that time for kind of the ConvertKit brand?
I don't think we really grew an email list separate for ConvertKit at that time. I think it was actually opt-in forms in my own.
Okay.
I think it was my own ConvertKit account for my blog, basically. And it was all blended together.
Yeah.
And I think I might have been up to 10,000 email subscribers at that time, maybe 15. Because back when I was blogging quite a bit, I got, pretty good search traffic and stuff like that I honestly don't have anymore as, blogging took a backseat to growing ConvertKit. But what was kind of funny is that, it took 6 months to go from 2,000 a month to 10,000 a month. And really 2.5 years in, we're at 10,000 a month. And then in one day, Pat Flynn, another big blog called Wellness Mama, which is a giant health and wellness blog run by Seth and Katie, who are now really good friends of mine. And this big barbecue blog all signed up on the same day. And so our monthly recurring revenue went from 10,000 a month to 15,000 a month in a single day, which was crazy. And then it kind of kept going up from there, more gradually. But then a couple months later, I think in September, Pat was up and running, Wellness Mama was up and running, and they both started talking about it at the same time. And then things just exploded. Like in September, I think we were doing 20,000 a month. October was like 35 or 40,000 a month. November was 60 and December was 100,000.
Let me ask you this. I know some of these big names and also other names, obviously, they have written reviews so maybe talk about that. How do you get people to actually review? Do you just have a great product and they do it? Obviously, you have affiliate commission, but maybe talking about this kind of how it can apply to an online creator. How would you get someone to talk more about whatever you're doing? Obviously, that can help. That's something we are doing for Virtual Summit Mastery and stuff like that. We want people to have, not just on my website that I'm featuring a review or video. I want to also have other websites that people talk about. It's also good for SEO and stuff like that. So what was the strategy for ConvertKit, and how can that apply to others, online creators?
Yeah, so there's probably 2 times in my career mainly that I've tried to go out and get reviews specifically. One for ConvertKit, one for a book. So the first thing that I would say is with ConvertKit, obviously having an affiliate program helps, right? That's been a core part of our strategy for growing. People who love the product are able to make some money referring it to their fans and audiences. And that's big for people like Pat, where, if we ran a traditional small business and I have a customer who loves it, they might tell 2 or 3 of their business owner friends. In Pat's case, he's going to tell 10,000 of his closest friends, like,
Right.
check this out. There's a lot of momentum there. In a case like Wellness Mama, they're not a blog about online business, right? People don't go to them to learn how to start a blog or do email marketing. So there's not as much traction there, but what happens is basically they would refer friends, and they have a lot more friends like them who are professional bloggers, and so they've actually become a big affiliate. But one thing that we did is, in addition to paying out the affiliate commission, we said, hey, anyone who writes a review of ConvertKit in the next month, we're going to give them a month free of ConvertKit.
That's a great way, actually. I like that. That's awesome.
Yeah. What ended up being cool about it, right? ConvertKit is priced based on how many subscribers you have. So if you have, 800 subscribers, 1,000 subscribers, you're paying $29 a month. And if you write a review, you're going to get the affiliate commission off anyone you refer. And I'm going to give you a $29 credit, right? Because a month free on your account. But if someone who has 100,000 subscribers writes a review and sends that out to their list, that's a $600 commission. So they're like, or not commission, credit that they're getting to their account. And so it scales nicely with the value, rather than saying like, oh, I'll pay $100 for every review. Instead, for us offering that month free, it comes back in a really nice way. And so we ended up getting a bunch of reviews around that time that all kind of came out at once and really kickstarted some search results. And then if you search ConvertKit review, ConvertKit versus Aweber,
I'm ranking pretty well for my review, actually. I'm ranking pretty well. So I haven't really even SEO'd it much or even built some links to it, but I'm ranking like sometimes first page, sometimes second page. So gives some good. Also, when people search like ConvertKit trial or something, then people tend to find reviews. I mean, that's a great way. Obviously, if you have a software company, it makes it easier to do that type of stuff. And maybe if you have an online course or something, you can add an extra bonus or something like that for anyone to do it. Then obviously, you want them to write an honest review, not just saying, they can say whatever they want, basically. So it's an authentic review. But most of the time, if you have done a good job with the quality and stuff like that, they're gonna say the good things and maybe a few things that they could be better, and then obviously helps you improve. But that's still good for what you are doing, I think. So that's some tip for if you're not having obviously a software or something where you can offer credits and stuff like that for this. So
I did this once with an ebook. So I have a book called Authority. It's teaching people how to do self-publishing. I think it's up to like 20,000 copies sold. So it's done really well. Back around this time, like 2014 or so, I went and recorded an audio version of it, put it up on Audible. And I emailed everyone who had purchased Authority, which maybe at the time was like 3,000 or 4,000 people, and said, hey, 2 quick things. One, Authority is now on Amazon, and there's a print edition of it if you want to go get that. And 2, I have a new edition that includes the audiobook. Since you already bought it, there's a link to go upgrade. I don't remember what I charged, like a pretty inexpensive upgrade to the new edition. But I also said, if you go write a review on Amazon and then shoot me an email, then I'll give you the upgrade for free. I'll give you the audio version as well for free. And I think I had like 150 people take me up on that. And so now I think that Amazon, I don't know all the details of their review ranking system and whether it's a verified review or things like that. But I was able to get 150 reviews from people who had actually read the book in like 2 days, and really kickstart that just by incentivizing it by saying, hey, I'll give you the audio version for free if you do this. So I think if you have courses, or like, even if you're not going on a marketplace, if you just want great testimonials, right? Then at the end of your course, or you could email all the buyers or something where you're saying, hey, if you loved this, go post a testimonial here, in our comment section, or submit it here, and we'll give you this extra thing for free. And it works really well.
Awesome. Yeah, and also another thing is just having good relationship with your customers helps too. Like, I can reach out to many of my virtual summit mastery students and just kind of say, hey, we are doing this thing. Would you like to do an interview for like 30 minutes or something to just share your story or something? Or even sometimes when I'm on location, I mean, that's when you scale your business. You maybe go to different events that you can bring maybe your video guy and you can shoot a professional story maybe at their home or at location to save some cost there. But that's something we are doing with it. But kind of bringing back to what you share. Okay, you got Pat Flynn on board for ConvertKit. That was in 2015. You just kind of started to scale that up to, you know, multiple 5 figures a month, and it came to 100K a month, obviously. So what did you then separate it from kind of what you were doing with nathanbarry.com and actually build out, okay, now ConvertKit is completely separate here. We need to have its own, you know, email list for that. And when was that stage for ConvertKit?
Yeah, so I think probably about that 20,000 a month mark, I started splitting everything out because we were realizing, okay, ConvertKit's going to be way bigger than just the Nathan Barry brand. And that really got into our next customer acquisition channel, or I guess email subscriber acquisition channel into customers. And that was when we started doing webinars around that $40,000, $50,000 a month mark. We started doing webinars for the affiliate program. Very first webinar we ever did was with John Lee Dumas from Entrepreneur on Fire. And that did well. I remember afterwards, after we got off the call, he was like, okay, here's a bunch of webinar tips, right? Like he gave me some beforehand, but then afterwards he was like, okay, make sure you do this, you know, for your next webinar, here's a few tips on your, like your sales pitch and the close, maybe do it a little bit differently like this. And that was super helpful because I was totally new to all of that. But webinars ended up being a really great way for us to grow the email list, grow the customer base. And it kind of took off from there.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen obviously with, you know, all the partner webinars. I mean, you've done with Pat Flynn. I mean, we had you all, even on my first list building school when I did that, obviously, you know, sent some people. I mean, I'm getting like every month. I haven't even pushed it like ConvertKit, but now obviously we're creating some evergreen funnels for it. So yeah, you can definitely check out the links. We have like trials and stuff like that. If you're just on my, you know, in my audience in general, read a review or something, or even on a summit, we give you 30 days for free to kind of test it out, and you know, you can see test run it. And if you're a paying customer of any of my programs, we give you actually 60 days. So that's pretty much a no-brainer to get started, right? So that obviously have helped. I mean, it must have helped also for the webinars to have some kind of trial. So it's not like feels that much. There's not like a hard sales pitch there for people to come on board for your webinars. I see now you're not even running them anymore. I think it's Isa is running your webinars now, or your webinar producer. So maybe you had like that transition. You ran it for, I don't know, how many webinars did you do for partners and just kind of in general before you kind of gave that up to someone else that could potentially, I'm not sure if she's closing better, but maybe you can share a little bit around that.
Yeah, so I don't actually know the number that I did personally, at least 50 to 100. Yeah. Well, at least 50 to 70 probably, that I did myself. And then somewhere in that time, about like the range that we were going from 100,000 a month to, in like that next year, we went from 100,000 a month to $500,000 a month in revenue. And
what was the
during
email
that time,
list like at that stage? What was so people kind of, I mean, I know it's, I mean, for people, you know, you might have, you have a different business, but still for you, what did that translate into? Okay, you had X amount of email subscribers to have that, you know, monthly recurring revenue.
Yeah, so it grew pretty quickly to over 10,000. And then in that time period, maybe by the end of the year, we got it to 50, 75,000. We actually pretty aggressively prune our email list. That's one thing with, if you grow your list through a lot of partnerships, then people may not have built that engagement with you, right? They came from a webinar. If they didn't even attend the webinar, they might go cold on your list pretty quickly. If they're like, I didn't actually really learn from your content because I didn't stick around long enough to learn. So we, even today, like even last week or 2 weeks ago, we deleted 30,000 people off our email list who weren't engaged. So we do that continually. So I think even today we only have 120,000, 110,000 people on our email list, because we are acquiring them really quickly. And then, you know, every 3 months, eliminating the people who aren't engaged, because we want to have the best deliverability and open rates. And, you know, we want to show all the providers that we're sending to the cleanest lists.
Yeah, and obviously ConvertKit can do that pretty easily as well. It kind of shows you the inactives, which is pretty cool. Some providers don't do this very easily, but ConvertKit is pretty easy just to kind of clean it out. And you don't have to obviously delete everyone. That's just a tip. You can obviously retarget them at some point later and stuff like
Yeah.
that. I mean, you don't pay. Also, that's a good thing with ConvertKit, right? You don't pay if someone is just canceled or like unsubscribed on your
Right.
list. So you can definitely unsubscribe and keep them there, or just download a CSV file easily, and then that's it. So you don't have to. So you can actually use that data at some point. That could be useful, right? So what would you say that partner webinars that grew it up to about that kind of level, or do you have any? I mean, I know you're doing a content now for your blog. I mean, that must help
Yep.
quite a bit. Do you have any paid ads as well to kind of grow that email list and acquire customers as well?
We've done some paid ads. We've never been that good at it, honestly. I think that's one of those things that maybe I think software is a harder sell than a lot of content. And I don't, say that to diminish anyone who's selling content. Like I've sold both quite a bit, and selling software through paid ads just tends to be quite a bit more expensive than getting someone to make more of an impulse purchase. So we haven't been super effective at that. We still spend a decent amount on ads, maybe 15, 20,000 a month. But like in the grand scheme of the size of the business, it's not very much. So that's driven some revenue, but not a lot. Webinars and affiliates have really been the biggest thing. And then, content's played a big role. So kind of 2016 to 2018, we really laid the foundation for our blog. A lot of great content there. We produced an online magazine called Tradecraft, where we came out with one issue a month on basically all the topics that creators are going to really care about and really need to know about. And so, it ranges from how to do affiliate marketing to design for non-designers to, everything you need to know about SEO, and each issue is a specific topic. And those have done really well. And so the organic traffic has just started to climb pretty nicely there, grow our email list well, and grow all our rankings. So that's been big. And then I think the last thing is just kind of the brand and word of mouth. Like as people have really enjoyed using the product and gotten results with the product, then they talk about it. So you see in Facebook groups all over, you see on Twitter, someone's like, what's that? Like this happened the other day. Someone tweeted a screenshot of their list growth, going up after they implemented a tweak. And like, there were 3 questions. What tool is that? What do you got there? And they're like, oh, that's the new subscriber graph in ConvertKit. And so because it's in an area where people, like in blogging, people are sharing their results, they're talking about what works, then ConvertKit's kind of naturally part of that conversation.
That's
and
awesome. I wanted to share actually something I think that's, part of, you're so approachable as a founder, I think. Still at this 8-figure run rate, right? Annual recurring revenue.
Yeah.
You still come into the Facebook group and someone has an issue or something happens or you come in there and people, you are very approachable. I think you can't really get that even from ActiveCampaign. They are more corporate, right? Infusionsoft, they're much more corporate. So I think that stuff, you bring in more authenticity, I guess, to the game as well. That's kind of how you made a lot stand out. And obviously, if you're watching this, be that person. That's kind of what you want for your community. You're a creator, you're creating courses, whatever you are, you're going to be there for your customer. If they have an issue or if they celebrate a win or whatever it is, you can be there. I think that's kind of what you guys at ConvertKit, you and the team, you have done pretty well, and gonna acknowledge you for that.
Yeah.
Honestly.
So one thing on that, like taking that all the way back to what we talked about in the first place, right? Go on a journey, be human, teach everything you know, go on a journey. And so in those early days, right, even building the very first email list for the App Design Handbook, it's like, hey, I'm Nathan. This is what I'm working on. This is what I'm making. Follow along. Is that helpful to you? Okay, buy this, right? You're engaging with a person. Whereas so many people are trying to be much bigger than they are. Like we're trying to be this big formal corporation. We're trying to send fancy templated emails that are all designed out and have terrible copy, or whatever else that it is. Everyone's trying to look bigger and more important than they are. And instead, I'm just like, look, people want to build a relationship with humans. They want to buy from people that they like. And so be human. You're not, if even when your course is doing $1 million a year, which is an incredible success, like you're not too good to go hang out in a Facebook group and answer questions and jump on a live Q&A call every Friday or, those kind of things. And so that's the way I see it, even as ConvertKit's doing, 15 million a year in revenue. Um,
No, totally. I mean,
it's
I
run
even
by
see this
creators.
from. I see that. I just want to share. I see this from Pat Flynn. Even he, I mean, has a massive audience now, hundreds of thousands of email subscribers, and obviously, even him, he jumps on a call with some people, not obviously everyone, but like here and there, he takes some
Right.
people from his audience to get on a call to kind of get to know them better, right, and see kind of what he can do better, what they're liking, and stuff like that. So I think that's kind of what you guys are doing as well. You're very approachable and just kind of. I see too many people who think, okay, I'm making $1 million a month or whatever I'm doing, or hundreds of thousands a month, and they think they are too high level for their students, and that's not good. Like that's not what they want to see when they come on a webinar and you're sitting there and bragging and only kind of going on. That's not what they want really. They want to kind of relate to you in some way, right? And they want to
Right.
connect with you. That's like how we are. Like same we are same level whether we have a 8-figure business or that. Like as a person and that we are as a human being, we are the same, right? That's kind of how I
Right.
want to see it at least. So that's I think what you guys are doing well with ConvertKit too. So yeah, I mean, I
Yep.
wanted to share something. I mean, I don't know if you have anything to add to that. Otherwise, I wanted to kind of shift gears a little bit to if you had any strategies around the affiliate, basically bringing on affiliates for ConvertKit. If you want to share for kind of someone who has maybe a new online program or online course, or they have been running it for a while. Do you have any strategies for that or tips for kind of getting the first people on there? So obviously, they don't have a software company. They have an online program, book, whatever they have,
Yep.
they want to promote.
Yeah. So an important thing that I learned about affiliates back in the day came from Chris Gillibo, and he called it the 98-2 rule of affiliates. And I was like, okay, you're telling me this. I'm thinking like, okay, 80-20. I know that rule. Like 80% of your results come from 20%. So I'm assuming that means 98% of your results come from 2% of your affiliates. And so I kind of said that back to him. He's like, no. That's not what it means. I was like, okay, well, what's the 98-2 rule? He goes, the 98-2 rule is that only 2% of your affiliates will ever sell anything at all, ever. And this is why everyone launches an affiliate program and says like, oh, it didn't work for me. Because they're expecting that, 20% of people or 30% of affiliates or whatever who sign up will actually refer a sale. And the thing is that when you have that open affiliate program, people are just signing up, they're checking it out, and they just won't do anything. Even those who are successful and have the ability to do something. And so the approach that we took to prevent that from happening is to apply the same direct sales principles to affiliates that we had applied to getting customers. So actually showing up in person, going and meeting with customers, trying to do whatever we can to really recruit our dream affiliates. And then once we do that, we sit down and say, okay, great, let's schedule webinars. Let's figure out where does it make sense for you to promote ConvertKit in your content that already ranks. Let's get on your resources page. Let's look at your content calendar for the year and see where we could work into different content. And so we actually have our affiliate manager, Alexis. What she does now is she actually travels around and meets with all these affiliates in person. And people are like, oh, I've been an affiliate for Bluehost or these other companies for a long time, and no one's flown out to meet me.
Yeah.
And so it's these things where you can actually demonstrate care and make people feel special for the cost of like a $400 plane ticket. And so we do that kind of thing a lot. And we continually make lists of who are our dream affiliates that we'd like to work with. And then what cities are they in? Let's meet with them in person. If we can't meet with them in person, let's get on calls and be really proactive about that rather than just seeing, hey, we opened up an affiliate for Paris commission. Like, let's sit back and wait and see what happens, because that's just not going to get you results.
Yeah, totally. I mean, this is a fantastic strategy. Actually, something we use for even summits and other things we are doing. Whether we can fly to meet them or meet at conferences, we actually go on calls with every single speaker pretty much on summits or anything. We jump on calls to see kind of how we can support them in some way, if we like what they are working on. So we focus on them a lot. So we actually, how can we make this a win to be part of, let's say, a summit or whatever? And then we might, we might ask them, okay, so does it work for you to share this? How can, and also I focus a lot on how I can make it really beneficial for them, right? That's also what you gotta do. So maybe you don't come with your first program, like if you don't have any reviews, it's just in beta or something, then you might want to get some success stories first. But then you can definitely maybe after you've done a launch successfully or something, then you can recruit your students, recruit some other people. And I think I don't know who talks about this, but I talk about it quite some time as well, like the Dream 100. I think I saw Russell Brunson talk about this, like having this list of people, right? That's kind of like you want to have them. Like for you, it might have been Pat Flynn. Now, actually, which we can get into as you're scaling ConvertKit, like you got like Brennan Dunn, Andrew Chaperon, like some advanced email marketers too are coming on board with ConvertKit, and they see like some more feature being added there. So as we shift gears to kind of wrapping this up, like what are you guys doing in ConvertKit now to, I guess, take things even further? I mean, you are at a good rate, but what are you gonna do to keep scaling this and keep attracting more people like that to, you know, use ConvertKit?
Well, I think the first thing is that we made a pivot. It's not really a pivot. We basically expanded our circle. Right? We're email marketing for professional bloggers, but not everyone identifies with that term, right? There's YouTubers and podcasters and authors and all these other people using ConvertKit, and we're basically seeing that expand as we, Tim Ferriss has been using ConvertKit for the last 2 years. You get other authors like Gretchen Rubin from the Happiness Project. She's written a bunch of incredible books. She's using ConvertKit. By the way,
how did you get these people, Nathan? How did you get like Tim Ferriss? Did he just randomly stumble across ConvertKit, or did someone refer him? I don't know if you can, how much you can share, but like you have some other people like that. I mean, he's not the only very kind of very well-known name is using ConvertKit. So how did you get someone like that to, okay, I'm gonna use ConvertKit and run basically my email marketing there?
Yeah, so that was a process of really, it was like 2 years in the making. Probably the first step was demonstrating value and like building my own credibility. Because at the time, Tim was thinking about doing some more, like maybe some of his own courses or things like that, right? Because he's friends with people like Ramit Sethi and Marie Forleo and a bunch of other people who make a lot of money from courses. And he was totally in the book world, so he was considering going down that road. And a friend introduced Tim and I because I had a very high revenue per subscriber on my email list. I didn't care about the total list size. I cared about how much I made per subscriber, and that was very high. So yeah, I think back in 2013 or 2014, somewhere in there, Tim and I first met and talked on the phone a bit after a friend introduced us. So just sort of stayed in touch. But then for actually getting him on the platform, the thing that mattered was figuring out who ran everything behind the scenes. A friend refers to this as the right-hand man principle. Of basically everyone's trying to talk to the famous person, but that doesn't matter. Figure out who the famous person's main guy or girl is and like become friends with them because they're way easier to reach. Everyone's not beating down their door. They're not like the Gary Vaynerchuk where they're, mobbed at a conference or something like that. Instead, they're the ones like doing all the work behind the scenes. So figure out who that is, get an introduction to them, get to know them and then have that conversation. And so that's what I did. Learned who ran all that stuff behind the scenes for Tim. Flew to his city, met with him in person. And it was probably 2 years start to finish from like, we'd love to have Tim on ConvertKit to, he sent his first email. But, he's obviously played a huge role and been a huge influence on the future of the product and everything else. And we just keep going down that road. Like we've gone kind of bigger and bigger names, as we expand to all of creators. So like 2 recent examples, Tim McGraw uses ConvertKit to stay in touch with all of his fans. And then Arnold Schwarzenegger actually just launched an email newsletter on ConvertKit a few weeks ago.
No way, that's incredible.
So it's just like, when you go to all creators, it's a pretty massive list.
Yeah, so I mean that's really exciting because I mean I know you launched as an email service for professional bloggers, and now I think I identify more. I mean, whether you're not a blogger or not, like online creator is a better fit now. But maybe I don't know. Do you think you could have started as that, or was it like really beneficial to be just for professional bloggers initially, and now a few years in kind of branch out? I mean, you had some. I mean, you kind of rebranded a little bit. That didn't, that we don't have to go into that too much. But like, I think the branding now is also a lot cleaner than it was before. Although you didn't change the name of ConvertKit, which I appreciate. I like the ConvertKit name as it is. But the new branding looks a lot of fresher and stuff like that. Do you think that whole thing mattered as well to kind of stick it to professional bloggers initially and then kind of go to online creators now?
Yeah, I think that it really helps to start narrow. Right, because we even started way more narrow than just professional bloggers. We were basically like email marketing for professional paleo recipe bloggers, email marketing for professional men's fashion bloggers.
Right.
Because if you start really broad, if we were like email marketing for creators, oh, what's a creator? Oh, well, like a musician, a podcaster, a YouTuber, a blogger, an author, then people are like, so that's a lot of people. You can't go after a narrow market. And so I think it's really good to start narrow and then kind of
Awesome.
broaden from there into the
Yeah.
channels where either you've always wanted to go or where you start to see success.
Yeah, because there's a lot of YouTubers who are not building their list, for example. So that's a pretty massive market, I would say, and that would be a great fit for ConvertKit. But let's say someone is using a tool. What's your approach to kind of getting them to switch over to ConvertKit? Do you have any kind of strategies for that? Obviously that's really specific to kind of a software to switch from something, but what are you doing there to kind of like you have a lot of competitors, obviously, in the email marketing space.
Right.
There's a ton of the other tools.
I like to focus on frustrations.
Yeah.
So this is the first email that I would send to people in the direct outreach side of things. And I would just say, hey, what's frustrating you about MailChimp? What's frustrating you about Aweber, about whatever tool they're using? And people are like, oh, let me tell you, there's always things, and you can go the other way. What's frustrating you about building an email list? What's frustrating you about sticking to your weight loss goals? What's frustrating you about building a business? All of those things. If you ask about frustrations and where they're getting stuck, then that can be a great thing where they tell you what problems they have that they would buy in order to solve. So it applies to all types of products. And we did it very heavily in the, in the email space, and just saying, get them to call out all the things that frustrated them. It was all the same things, right? They're like, I can't tag my customers. I can't do content upgrades. It's really a pain to set up automations.
Yeah.
Like everyone has the same list. And then I'd be like, oh,
Yeah.
funny. That's the same list that I had when I was using MailChimp.
Right.
And that's why I started ConvertKit. So it rolled into this really natural sales process.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And you can use it for any kind of product.
For sure. I mean, this has been great, Nathan. I'm really excited to kind of hear kind of your story of going from this side project to this really big business, but also how this could apply it to pretty much any kind of online creator. What you have done, your journey, kind of translating from personal brand to now SaaS business, obviously with ConvertKit. And I think there's a lot of takeaways from this. But like, number one email list building strategy. It was partner webinars, obviously, for you guys to kind of really hone in on the kind of Dream 100, and the people really wanted to use it. And then now kind of scaling to kind of starting niche really narrow, and then going broader to kind of the online creator market, and then also getting some celebrities on board doesn't hurt, right? So getting some great names on there. So do you have any kind of final words as we wrap this session up here, Nathan, before we say goodbye?
Yeah, I think that I have a sign behind me that says create. There's another part to that usually shows up on the t-shirts and everything else, and that's create every day. And this is something I always want to reiterate for people, is that this is hard to do, and it takes forming a habit of creating. So whether you're working on software or whatever else, like, it's going to take a long time. And the thing that's going to get you through it is having that habit where you can keep coming back to, I'm going to create consistently. And my friend Sean McCabe has a saying of, I think he has it on a poster even, of show up every day for 2 years. Because I think so many people say, like, I'm going to launch this thing and then it's going to go great. And I didn't get any traction. Maybe blogging is not for me. Maybe starting a software company is not for me. Or YouTube channel is not for me. And we're like, you worked on it part-time for 3 months. You worked on it part-time for 6 months. Like, this is going to take time. And so I would just say, as a creator, set your expectations. I'm going to work on this every single day for 2 years. And then I will make a decision as to whether or not it's been a success. Because I think too often we make it sound too easy. And I hope that's one thing that people take away from my story, is like, this is really hard and it's so worth it. And so put in that time, work on it consistently, and plan to do it for a very long time.
Yeah, absolutely, Nathan. This has been inspiring. This is great. I think, like, don't give up. Like, I see this in my community too, in Virtual Summit Mastery. Like, we have a lot of people coming in, do really well right away, but also there might be someone who doesn't do as well right, the first summit or the second one, but if they don't give up, they're not gonna fail. They're gonna keep going, and usually that's kind of what we see, right? You stick to it and you reiterate. You might tweak things, tweak your topic, whatever your angle, and then you are going to do well at some point. That was kind of my approach when I started my business. Like, this might take really long. My business took like 18 months for it to take off before I kind of went with my first summit, and then I was able to quit my job, and all this was not like overnight. So you might see these success stories here and there, but that's not usually kind of their backstory. You're gonna kind of dig deeper into this, and glad we got to see that kind of today here, that things takes time. So thanks so much, Nathan, for coming on here as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me.